Hey everybody, welcome to Sasquatchers. It is just Drew here so far tonight, and I do have a guest that I'm excited to speak with. And as always, I will give him a further introduction after our musical introduction.
Woo! Drew and John on the airwaves, seeking mysteries that can't be explained. Sasquatchers chasing shadows in the night. In the realm of the paranormal, they ignite. Sasquatchers, podcast pioneers, unveiling the unknown with curious ears. From specters to Bigfoot, they dig deep. Sasquatchers on a quest that's unique.
I'm pumped. I'm ready.
All right, yes, we are Sasquatchers, the only paranormal podcast with the punk rock attitude. And I like to think that I'm the only person in the world who has ever envisioned Sasquatch skanking in a field and brought that to everybody on our channel. We are being joined, I am being joined by Larry Eissler
Yep.
of Small Town Productions, and I'm going to let him introduce himself a little further for everybody. And after that, we'll just get into it.
Sweet. Yep. My name's Larry. I'm the director of Small Town Productions, the director of the Paraflix original series, Expedition Entity. Um, just last year, our first episode of season 3 won a Telly Award, which is a massive film festival. And I lost my webcam. That was weird. They're only a handful of paranormal shows that are entered into that festival, and another one of them was the Curse of Lizzie Borden. And apparently, the entire season of A Haunting, season 11, was entered in, and they won. So it feels really cool to be amongst that type of production, um, especially for something that it's just me doing everything. Outside of that, I'm the cinematographer on uh, ACG Paranormal Sounds of Spirits, and that's a music-based paranormal documentary that they use music to try to communicate with the spirits, and it's a really interesting concept. My friend Nat came up with it, and I'm really excited to work on their next one here sometime in the next year, hopefully in the fall. Outside of that, I do short narratives. I just completed a short thriller as part of my graduation requirements for my master's degree, and I have another horror narrative coming up here in the fall that I'm really looking forward to. Let's see what else. Uh, Public speaker. I'm going to probably about a dozen conferences this year, to the point where I'm starting to lose track of which ones are which and where I'm going. But I'm really excited because they're all bringing me in to give my presentations or the workshop that I give on producing paranormal documentaries. So I've taken my love of film and my love of paranormal and just kind of molded it together into this little ball, and I guess now I'm ready to play catch.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I find everything that you just said really appealing because it's all uh, similar interests to the things that I have that I like to do. I originally wanted to get into film years back. I was ready to go to a film school and just like 19, 20-year-old me just wasn't mature enough for it.
Hmm.
And I realized that, and instead of wasting an opportunity, I decided just to I guess waste it still by backing out of it. But that's always been something that we've been into. I have a couple of indie things that I've worked on, and I worked on other productions. But last year on Sasquatchers, when we had those really bad snowstorms on the East Coast, I'm not sure what part of the country you're in, but we had two really
I'm over
bad
by Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, so when those real bad storm, I'm sure you had just snow upon snow upon snow in Chicago, but we had two storms, and those two storms were
Normal for
wicked.
us.
Right. and we filmed a documentary. I drove 4 hours across state lines into Ohio, and we filmed a documentary there about the Melonheads. And I came back,
Hmm.
and I had downloaded DaVinci and I edited it. I pumped it out in like less than 2 weeks. So that's film is still something that I care deeply about, and I still am like dipping my toes into and trying to figure out how to kind of
Yeah.
blend those worlds into the paranormal, like you're doing so expertly. Yeah, so I'm not trying to
I
compare,
don't know. I don't know about expertly.
but
I'm doing okay, and that's kind of why I really want to make my workshop. Like I got a late start at all this. I was in the army for 10 years. I didn't start college until I was, let's see, almost 30. Um, I just graduated at 36. So I got a really, really, really late start. But there are a lot of people that can't afford to go to college, or they don't have the GI Bill that'll let them go to college. So, that's why I wanted to do the workshop, because it takes everything that I did teaching undergrad students at the university and starts to like mold it towards the paranormal.
yeah.
And instead of focusing on narrative projects, we're going to focus more on documentary projects, because 9 times out of 10 your paranormal content's documentary style, and a lot of that information transfers over to where, let's say you're doing an interview for your paranormal video. Well, you need to know how to set the interview up. You need to know the proper angles. You need to know the proper positioning for light. You need to know that you need to separate your foreground and your background with light. These are all things to where if you don't know that and you don't plan for it in advance, whatever you film is not going to look good. And then at that point, if it was an amazing investigation but it doesn't look good, like that just sucks, because
Yeah,
because no one's going to watch it. And you have all this amazing stuff and just like, look what happened, but no one gets into it because the first 10 seconds they turn it off.
right.
So, that's kind of where the workshop that I'm doing is like, let's take what you're doing and just elevate it higher so that more people can see the great work you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you said a lot that I kind of want to unpack. So if I forget something, that'll be unfortunate. But I want to start with, you and I are the same age, and you
Okay.
look a solid 10, maybe 12 years younger than I do. You don't have to you don't have to admit if you're dyeing your beard or not, or if there's baldness under that baseball cap. But I will throw out a compliment that
Uh,
you okay, all right.
it's
So
it's messed up, but it's there.
I am also 36, and I look like your grandfather right now with the amount of gray hair that I have. But aside from me aging like a skunk, uh, with filming documentaries, especially in the paranormal realm, something that I never really considered would be like the parallels. If you were straight out of film school and you do have to
Mhm.
focus on the lighting and those kinds of things. But what about, have you are you in the editing process as well? Because I know that it's kind of preached that your shot shouldn't stay uh, on any certain thing for X amount of sentence. I think it was like 3 or 7. I can't remember off the top of my head. But
Mhm.
you should have a cut like every 3 seconds or 7 seconds to keep what's happening on
Mhm.
screen interesting. So in that regard, when you're watching like a narrative film versus the documentary, how do you keep things interesting as far as the palette on screen when you're doing a documentary style, especially in like the paranormal realm where everything's already kind of dark and dungy, and a lot of it is interview based or kind of standing around in a group.
Mhm.
How do you make a graveyard interesting while also maintaining the integrity that what you're doing is true and being documented?
So it it can be a chore. Um, it all comes down to, would I watch this if I wasn't creating it? And I watch a lot of shows. I watch TV shows, I watch streaming shows, I watch podcasts, and I I've gotten to the point now where I know what I think is good and what I find entertaining. So, when I sit there and I work on my own stuff and I kind of sit back and I watch it back over again, I go, okay, is this something that I would be entertained with? And if it's not, I start to make changes to make it entertaining. But at the same time, as the creator of the documentary, I have to stick to my morals, and I have to be ethical with any change that I make, because any change that I make could change the story that I'm trying to tell. It could change the way that people perceive the location. So we did an episode. I want to say it was, I think, season 1 of Expedition Entity. It was this little farm town cemetery in the middle of nowhere, a town of like 2,000, 3,000 people, surrounded by cornfields. It's just the smallest little cemetery ever. But it's a cemetery that we've never struggled to get activity in. Like countless voices, spirit boxes, IR photos, thermal, physical interactions. This cemetery is haunted as heck. I don't know why. It just is. So we filmed there, and it it was a challenge at first because it's like everything just looks the same. No matter what way you point the camera, it's just headstones and grass.
Okay.
So it all comes down to the person in front of the camera then. You know, we need that person to be charismatic and energetic to pull the audience into them, so they don't realize that it's just a cemetery in the background. And my partner, before he retired in January, Dan, was just the best. He is very charismatic. When he's on camera, he talks a lot, he uses his hands a lot. Very, very, very engaged in the stories that he's telling, the history he's telling. And people loved it. People loved watching him speak. They loved watching him go to conferences to speak. So, and I always said this, I'll say it now. You could be the most amazing filmmaker behind the camera, but if the people in front of the camera suck, it doesn't make a difference. So, being in front of the camera and being that point man or woman is just as important as the person behind the scenes making everything work. So, getting all that set up, it can be a chore, especially when you're outside, because you're dealing with things like sunlight, wind, traffic, bugs. If you're at night, there could be a random car in the background, their headlights go like this. And all of a sudden you're like, okay, that's not going to look good. We got to do it again. Inside, it's much easier. You have to account for a lot less, and you can control the light a lot better. And as you're kind of building this documentary during your pre-production phase, you have to plan for every step of the way the moment you set foot on ground for your investigation. So, if you're okay, I'm going to arrive at 10 a.m. By 11 a.m., I need to be set up and started with the interviews. Interviews have to be done by 2 p.m. B-roll has to start from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., we're eating food. Between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m., we're doing any extra B-roll, we're packing gear up, we're unpacking gear. 7 p.m. until 2 a.m., we're doing the investigation. These are the 10 to 15 spots we're going to investigate. Here's who's doing it, what equipment they're using, and yada, 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 yada. The more you can plan that stuff in advance, the easier it is the night of.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of almost storyboarding isn't something that I
Yeah.
even really put into my thought process, I guess, on how this would be done. That's that's a really good answer, because I think a lot of people think that because we have all of this technology just right here in our hands, that you can just go out,
Mhm.
and the iPhones are great, but you can't shoot what you're trying to shoot in that amount of time, with just yourself
No,
and without a crew. And I didn't even consider that you guys
you
would
can
be
do a
like
lot.
eating, or like a catering or anything like that. You have to have
Yeah,
your
yeah.
pizzas and stuff ready to roll. Uh,
You have to feed people, because it's the one thing where it's like, if they're hungry, they're disgruntled, and they're not going to be respectful when they're investigating. Got to feed them.
Right. Yeah.
You also have to provide like a case of water. People get thirsty, they have a hard time talking, their throat gets dry, they cough. The cough sounds bad. You don't want that loud cough when you're reviewing evidence. Get a case of water. It's like $5 at the store, and everyone will be happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna have to keep all that in mind because when we when we went out and we shot our documentary, we had a couple we used some lapel mics and our iPhones, and from there it was just pure and utter
Mhm.
chaos where we just kind of went out and we did have goals of what we wanted to accomplish, but we didn't have any timetables, and it was just myself and my co-host JC, and we just went
Mhm.
out and kind of allowed the chaos of what we were doing control how we accomplished it. And
Yeah,
uh,
and it can be chaos. It can be utter chaos until you get home and you don't realize it, but you start looking over your footage and like, why is this video 5 hours long? Why did we never stop and restart? Why is this audio recording an hour and a half? Because no one
yeah,
was controlling it.
yeah,
When we filmed for the show, um, the whole premise behind Expedition Entity was that it's the lesser known haunted locations of the American Midwest. That was like in the log line of the show, right? In the description. However, there's also something that wasn't mentioned, but it applied to every episode. Whatever time frame that you as an investigator could rent that building out, that's how long we investigated. So, for an example, in season 2, we investigated the Egyptian Theater in DeKalb, Illinois. A beautiful theater. Um, they modeled it after the discovery of King Tut's tomb. So, like a legit Egyptian theater. But you can only rent a 4 hour time block. And then they'll give you an hour before and an hour after, for an added charge. So we rented the building for 6 hours. It takes an hour to set up and an hour to tear down all of our equipment, right? So for 4 hours, that's the entire episode. Everything took place in 4 hours. So, we aim for 10 sessions because there's going to be some sessions where you get nothing, right? The spirits don't want to talk or they don't interact. Well, you can't show that because there's not enough time in the episode to show everything. You got to try to show the best stuff that you can. So in those 10 sessions, we aim for them to be approximately 10 minutes each. We have to capture everything that we possibly can in that 10 minutes because I'm only going to be able to show 4 or 5 of them total. And, every session starts with Dan and Larry in the Egyptian theater using this camera, this microphone, yada 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 yada. And then you do the slate, or because we're IR, you can't read the slate. We do the clap, so all the microphones can line up in editing. From that point forward, everything is in the episode. Everything prior to that is cut out because you don't need all that. Only a small amount of times was that ever included because a voice was heard during that part of the episode. But from that point forward until the end, we might be in the room for 10 minutes, but only 8 minutes of it is the investigation. I strived really hard to include that entire 8 minutes without removing anything, without adding sound effects, without adding, you know, freeze frames. Like what you saw is what we experience as investigators, and that's just the style that I did. But a lot of people really liked it, really responded to it. But it also made it kind of challenging to edit because you only had one chance to see and hear something because that's all I had when I was investigating. It was one chance to see and hear it. So it was a gamble. I didn't know if people would respond to it the way they inevitably did, but people liked it because it was almost like watching true investigating and
yeah,
not
right, right.
being shown investigating.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I kind of agree with. I like the idea of seeing how the investigators are actually working a case versus seeing this like polished, overproduced, I guess, maybe almost even retrospective about it, like you see on a lot of like the TV shows.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
I,
they'll do that. Here's the sound clip, and then they'll play it
right,
3 times, and it's completely disconnected from the flow of the video. Like that investigation session, you just completely stopped it to play this sound effect 3 times. and then start it back up again. When you think about it, it's kind of jolting. It's just like, okay, hold on, we stopped. All right, yeah, I hear it. Okay, I heard it again. I heard. Come on, let's go. I never really liked that, and I used to do that, and after a while, I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, this just completely takes me out of the investigation if I were watching it. So I stopped, and now it's like, we filmed the show in third person perspective. So, the investigators never talk to the camera unless something happened to a camera operator, which is usually me or Steve. We're investigators and camera operators. So, very rarely were we in front of the camera. We were mostly behind the camera. But unless something happened to us, no one talked to us. So you as the viewer were basically the camera. You're there watching the investigation happen instead of sitting back and watching it unfold in front of you.
Right, yeah. So then it's almost like this immersive experience to draw your audience
Right?
in, and anybody watching feels like they're part of the crew.
Absolutely, exactly.
Yeah, so that's definitely a better, more interesting take, especially versus what you kind of see of the polished paranormal shows that are on TV. That's kind of a super rare idea. Do you happen to have anybody walking around dressed like guerrilla warfare and threatening to punch ghosts like Zach Baggins at all when you are doing your
I
investigations?
I can't say that I do. Um, the only one who might look like a gorilla would probably be me with all the crap that I've got strapped onto me. I've got my little tack vest with all the batteries and the SD cards and all the stuff piled into it. But that's no, no gorillas.
Yeah. Anytime I do a ghost or paranormal investigating episode, I always have to figure out a way to dunk on Baggins. It's a popular inside joke
I
with everybody.
I will say this as a filmmaker, a documentary maker, a graduated film student, he does phenomenal film work. Everything looks beautiful, everything sounds beautiful. The storyboarding, the B-roll, everything is planned to the T and it's incredibly well done. The investigations sometimes leave more to be desired.
Yeah, I mean that's
But
probably why he took off the way he did with their show, because it definitely is the paranormal show now. It definitely
mhm,
overtook Ghost Hunters in the zeitgeist many years ago. So
right,
obviously, from
it
the
it looks
production
good, it
standpoint,
sounds good, it's compelling. Yes, we as investigators can see it and be like, all right, this is ridiculous. Come on. But are we the audience? No, we're not the audience.
right?
Everybody who's watching it that wants to get spooked a little bit, they're the audience and they love it. They eat it up. And he knows
Yeah,
that. And that's why they keep making it on their 27th season. And the recipe hasn't changed yet because it sells.
yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right?
Apparently not. But, with the way that Discovery's going, shedding a lot of shows, from what I've heard, some of these current shows only have a year or two left, and then their contracts are up too. What's
Oh
going to
yeah.
happen next? Is there going to be a new network? Is it going to be streaming only now? Who knows?
Well, I mean, that is a completely different conversation to have at all. But Discovery and Warner, who are like the same company now after the merger,
Hmm.
are they just lost the NBA, and that's huge. I think for anybody that gets any type of rating whatsoever for any of their networks, losing out on billions of dollars of revenue from the NBA, I think it at least, in my opinion, might open up those small revenue streams for shows that are still producing some type of cable TV viewership. So
Hmm.
maybe these paranormal shows on Discovery might still have a fighting chance now that there's going to be NBA competition on all the other networks and streaming. But yeah,
Yeah.
Zaslav
Well,
is a clown.
You have Project Fear now, Destination Fear. Was it Destination? Not Destination Fear. Was it? I can't
There's
remember now. I can't remember what the original show was called.
Destination
Yeah, it's
Truth,
Destination Fear. No, it's Destination
and
Fear.
are you
No,
talking
was it
about
Okay,
the
they're
Josh Gates
Project Fear
shows?
now. No, 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 no. The oh crap, I can't remember the names now off the top of my head. So Destination Fear, whatever it was. Project Fear is their YouTube show. It used to be on Discovery, and I can't remember the name of the Discovery show. But Project Fear, they moved it to YouTube and renamed it, and it's extremely successful on YouTube. Right? You have shows like mine on Paraflix, a smaller paranormal network, but they keep things paranormal only for the most part. Documentaries and shows, music videos, it all has that ghost theme. You've got other smaller networks out there, Spirit Network and a couple of the other ones. I think at some point it's going to become clear that Discovery is going to be done with the paranormal within the next year or two. I can't say if a new network's going to pick it up or not. It's hard to say that. Um, Maybe Paramount Plus, maybe um, Peacock potentially, but like, who are the other players in town? Netflix isn't going to. Amazon Prime, no one's going to send their stuff there because Amazon doesn't pay anybody. So, you could already get your stuff on Amazon Prime now and get your 3 cents per thousand views. Whoop de doo. Um, I think it's just as likely that these smaller paranormal networks like Paraflix are going to become the home of paranormal. I think we're not going to get it on those big streaming networks for a long time until something major comes along to change that. I think for the time being, it's going to be these smaller networks, and that's the only place you're going to get this content now.
Oh, I mean, the landscape of television and streaming and entertainment in general is so fractured now anyway. We're all just kind
It
of
is, and
picking
they
and
did to
choosing.
themselves.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think wherever the paranormal goes, the audience is there for it. TikTok, for
Hmm.
example, paranormal TikTok is a huge genre, and
It is.
um, and
It,
that's
it
just
is.
because you're right there, and it's at the tip of your finger, and when you're ready for it, it's there. So I think even if Discovery and the cable channels kind of bail and streaming never really decides to invest in it, I think, like you said and pointed out, the shows that are on YouTube and taking it into their own hands, I will always be producing really good stuff. And then from there, it's just kind of up to the all
Well,
of the
and
viewers.
right, it's not even the paranormal though. It's indie filmmaking in general. Any documentary you make as a paranormal documentary maker, you're an indie filmmaker. It's just your genre is paranormal. As indie filmmakers, these distribution companies are raking us over the coals. They're giving us the worst possible deals to where you will never ever make money with them. And they always find a way to increase the cost here or there, or, oh, well, we shared your links twice on Facebook, so we had to charge you $1,000 for marketing. These companies, they're horrible out there, to where even non-paranormal filmmakers and documentary makers, they're putting their stuff on YouTube too. And for a long time people were going away from YouTube just because of there's some not great stuff on YouTube. People like to exaggerate things or fake things, or call everything a demon, but you're getting the same thing on TV anyway.
Right.
So it's like the paranormal's in a really weird place right now.
Yeah, yeah, it absolutely is. And I don't know if you ever kind of move past the ghosts or spirits and that kind of realm of the paranormal. But one thing that I can say as
Hmm.
far as the cryptozoology world is it's, I think, even worse off as far as the way that a lot of content creators are exploiting a narrative that has caught on to people, and really, I think embarrassing themselves and creating a situation where real true investigators are now kind of starting to slide away, just like the example that you made where like true paranormal investigators that were trying to put on real actual investigations that just kind of looked well on a YouTube channel, avoiding all of the that's a demon and that's a demon and that's a demon and I'm possessed because I was doing
Mhm.
it. That's bled over into the other realms, and it's rough, man. Paranormal's rough right now, and so
It is.
yeah,
It is. You have these young kids, and they're weird to call them young kids because I'm only 36, but they're like 22, 24, and they have these massive YouTube followings, and they're the ones being invited to conferences and being brought in to speak, not because they have a research study to talk about, not because they're trying to do a workshop to teach people how to do film or to create equipment or any of that stuff, but because the event organizer knows that they'll sell tickets. That's the only reason they're brought in. It's because they'll sell tickets. It does nothing to help the paranormal. It just helps make the organizers' pockets a little bit bigger.
yeah,
And
and
it's like it's a compounding problems on top of each other.
yeah, and I think that's kind of unfortunately that's just the nature of the beast with conferences as well, because like a lot now have become I think
Like Comic Con.
even with Comic Con, right? Now, Comic Con is a thing where like so everything blew up, and then every convention decided that they also had to be like this giant thing like Comic Con was. So you're bringing in these pair of
Hmm.
celebrities and the sensationalism and the sensationalists and everything has to come in because you want to bring in as many people as possible. Now these people are also
Hmm.
charging an arm and a leg, and what a lot of folks don't know is uh, uh, at least in the bigger conventions, I can't really speak too well on a paranormal one yet because there are a lot of mom and pops out there. So I don't want to defame
Yeah.
anybody,
Oh yeah.
but
Sure.
a lot of the larger conventions, you pay your celebrities up front, and then you control how much they charge for their autographs and their photographs and things of that nature, so that you make a profit off of them, and they have now
Sometimes.
all yeah. So like a lot of the film conventions in
Sometimes.
my
Like a lot of
area,
times, your bigger TV people. Yeah, your bigger TV people, their managers have already put in their contract. This is how much they're charging for their autographs. This is how much they're charging for their photos. If that's a problem, then they'll go to someone else's event.
right?
Medium-sized people that don't have as strong of representation, yeah, yes, they can be manipulated in that way. People on the smaller side where no one's paying for their autograph, no one's probably really going to pay to see them unless they have a really compelling workshop or presentation. They're the ones that are basically getting stuck paying to go to the event that they're speaking at. And that's where it kind of sucks because no one's paying them to be there. Most of the time, no one's covering their hotel or their travel. They have to pay all that money just to show up. And oh, yes, they might get in the door for free and they might get a vendor table for free, but you'll never equal out. You'll never break even because you're not big enough to bring in enough tickets in order to quantify you being there. And it's a shame. Um, but then there are also good conferences like the Gettysburg Bash. That one, they donate a ton of money to Wounded Warrior, and they have a lot of big names coming in, but they don't charge a fortune for people to come and see people. And that one I really really enjoy, and I'm looking forward to going there this year. But there aren't very many that are like that.
No, and there are new ones popping up every year, and you try to
Every
support
month it
them.
seems like.
Yeah, yeah, you try to support them, and we've had quite a few people on our show that actually run them. Uh, I don't know
Mhm.
if you've ever been to Parapsychon, but the
No,
we've
I wanted to, but I just sometimes the dates don't always work, especially because I was
yeah
in school. So there were a lot of events where it's just like, I can't go that one, I guess.
Yeah. So like I definitely have people on here who run events and conferences and conventions, and I do try to have that conversation with everybody. So like I said, and
Yeah,
certainly smaller ones, like there are people you can trust still, but what I think what happens is like with these larger ones that take advantage like they do, that's a big revenue
yeah,
stream. So eventually it becomes like almost like this hydra where there are less people that are popping up new trying to do things the grassroots and noble way versus well, okay, well now how can we get to this level? We'll make this kind of investment, but
right,
how are we going to get it back? And so then you get all
right.
of the well, let's grab these people who have a huge following on YouTube and offer very little
Mhm.
otherwise to get some eyes on our products instead of like the
Right.
hardworking people out there that are dedicating their absolute entire lives and their being to what you're doing. So yeah,
Right.
like
And
if
you also got to think about it from the vendor's perspective. Like if the event organizer doesn't bring in enough people, can I, as the vendor, justify being there?
right,
I have to get a hotel. I had to pay for my table, and then I have to sell enough product to equal out all my expenses. Can I do that or can I not? If the organizer only brought in 50 people, am I breaking even? Probably not, and definitely not going to make a profit. So, it's really important for these organizers to do whatever they can to bring people in, but it's not always what's best for the field in general. It usually ends up just being what's kind of best for them.
yeah. So like for sure, I think the direct to consumer route is I think like the safest it's the best route to even I think invest yourself into because once
Hmm.
you have that following who are willing to follow you through all of your investigations, we have this spiel, like, subscribe, follow, share.
Yeah,
When you have someone that actually likes you enough that's willing to do those things and go and rate you and then tell their friends that they should check your stuff out, well, then they get to a point where not only are they providing you that viewership, but also that next investigation, maybe they're a source of crowdfunding or
hmm,
like the things that we like, we want to keep. So that's when pirate music piracy. Like I always hated music piracy because like I like things, so I pay for it, so I can keep having things that I like provided to me. And that is kind of a weird dichotomy as a consumer because obviously like getting the most for your buck is also something that should be important, but
right,
when it comes to media and entertainment, like I like to support the people who are, I think, providing something that I consider to be a service worth having.
sure,
um, Likewise though, I think I have witnessed so many people take advantage of good-hearted folks like that, especially in the paranormal community, when
hmm,
everything seems to be like it's enhanced for donations. I hate to say it, like this is a conversation that we could be having live, right? But I have almost kind of gone backwards on my thinking as far as lives go because I have done lives with a lot of people and I see people doing lives and I like to have a conversation with you uninterrupted. We've gone almost 40 minutes now, and I thought this has been a pretty riveting conversation, and we've barely scratched the surface of anything that I wanted to ask you. But if we were
it doesn't
doing a
even feel
live,
like 40 minutes.
yeah, yeah. If we're doing a live and I have 10 people who are making donations, then it
Mhm.
kind of takes away. And then also as a guest, like, do we have an agreement? Are you getting any of the donations that we receive while I'm using you and your name on my show? And it's just like this whole gray area of YouTube, and I guess it's bled into podcasting too. That I hate.
Mhm.
Like, I don't. I guess I have that artistic integrity with this kind of thing, and that's the same reason why when I made my first feature, we did it with the cost of a watermelon, and everything else. It was a weekend filming, and we spent $6, and somehow there you go. There's our movie that we made when we were 17, but.
Yeah,
Uh, like that's
I
just
I made a lot of music videos in high school. with
Yeah.
a single camera and us playing the same song 15 times so that we can get it from this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle, this angle. And okay, now we have the action bits. I need you to run this way. Okay. Ah, you did it wrong. Do it again. And we just had fun with it. And were they good? Eh. Eh.
You're
But
right.
they were something. But it's like, what are you going to do with that nowadays? People are expecting such high quality caliber stuff, and it's just like, I should just have fun.
Yeah.
I'm not looking to be a millionaire. I'm not looking to be Zach Baggins. I just made this because it was fun.
And that's, I think, lost on a lot of people because the fun aspect, I think too many people don't even start out anymore for fun. Everything is 100% based
Right.
on, well, how can I be a YouTuber? How can I reach those watch numbers? How can I reach those subscriber numbers? And it becomes more,
Mm-hmm.
how do I turn this into a business versus, well, how do I go out and provide evidence of something that I have captured and
Right.
present it in a way that
Right.
people will want to see it, but also not lose sight of the fact that I have just now interacted with a spirit that is speaking to us from the other realm, and that part is the most incredible aspect of what's going on here. And it's the first thing that's kind of glossed over because we have to have our frame look a certain way and the lighting certain way, and we have to,
Mm-hmm.
like, the science behind catching on a YouTube channel. It's like, it's so aggravating when you have
Yeah.
this evidence.
Right. See, that's why I like what I do, because and it sucks because trying to grow your name in the paranormal as the filmmaker is incredibly difficult. It's always the person in front of the camera that gets the recognition, right?
Right.
So, but somebody has to keep track of everything. And when Dan and I filmed our show, that was our division of labor. His job was everything that takes place in front of the camera, and my job is everything that takes place behind the camera. He never once had to worry about, did this look good from this angle? Because I set it up. I know it looks good. All he had to do was do the investigation to the best of his ability and worry about nothing else. And sometimes, if you want to make content, you need that division of labor. One person can't do everything. You can't worry about, okay, what response did I hear? What was that? Did I see that shadow over there? Oh, but wait, was my face turned too far to where you can't see my face very well from the camera? Should I have looked this way instead? Let the camera guy worry about that. You worry about, was that a shadow, and what do I need to do to talk to them?
Yeah, right. And again, that's something that you don't really think about well, I guess I don't really, clearly you do, but it's not something that I really think about when, okay, so I'm out here, I'm shooting, I'm trying to talk to ghosts, I'm trying to interact with the spirits from another realm. I didn't think to bring a director, of photographer with me because I was more concerned about how I was going to talk to this spirit. So the
Hmm.
that way that you're hitting it, it's definitely it's the smartest way to go about it. And although your show might not be Zach
Sure.
Baggins level, clearly you have an intricate filmmaking brain that is guiding you through this process. And so that
I appreciate that.
yeah. And now we're at 44 minutes now, and so this has been really interesting. But I wanted to kind of get to the origin of all this, right? So you said that
Sure.
you started college at 30 because you were in the military. So
Yeah.
when in your life do you get into the paranormal, and why?
So it was 2009, September. I came home from my deployment, and I was a fan of the Ghost Hunter show prior to my deployment. But I stopped watching it because I was in the army and I had other things to worry about, right? But I get home and the show was still on the air, and I'm like, oh, this was a really good show. I'm gonna watch this. So I start watching it, and you realize like that looked kind of funny. Did that really happen? This is filmed like it looks like it's all happening in one night, but it doesn't feel like it's one night. It feels like this takes place over multiple nights. Okay. So I start being interested in the paranormal, and I I join a web forum, which is like extinct nowadays. That was the only way to talk to people back then, because Facebook
Yeah.
was mostly for college people and organizations. You couldn't just join Facebook. So there were web forums, and it was the Bachelor's Grove Cemetery's web forums. Um, and it covered all the stuff at the cemetery, for people catching things, but just general paranormal content too. And being on there, I was constantly disproving people's evidence. Around that time was when the phone apps were becoming prevalent, where they'd like
Okay.
superimpose the
Yeah.
ghost girl in a dress in the back of the hallway to make her, look like she was standing there. And it's like, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake. And finally, some group, the guy's name was Brandon Kreitzer, he invited me to join his group for an investigation. Scott Mansion, Joliet, Illinois. Here in B. Scott was one of the original patent holders for several strands of barbed wire, and he had a very, very nice house that was in a very, very sad state of disrepair. But having never investigated before and being told, hey, you need to stop crapping on our evidence and come out and do it for real. Okay, I was a cocky 20-something-year-old. Yeah, I'll go out there and I'll ghost hunt. I saw my first shadow figure blocking the light of a hallway. I felt my first temperature change. I saw lights that weren't coming from outside, and I was touched for the first time, all in one night, my very first investigation. And in order to ensure that I was in every single room while they were investigating, I was in charge of holding the camcorder. So here's me standing, with my back to the room and filming them, and I keep getting touched.
Yeah.
So that was an eye-opening experience, let's just say. Um, I start going to some abandoned locations, doing some urbex and investigating by myself. And then February 2010, this dude named Dan Norvell has a sizable Facebook following. I got onto Facebook because of being in the Army. That was one of the organizations that you could join Facebook with. And I was on Facebook for a little while. I come across him, and he's like, "Hey, we're doing a cemetery crawl tonight. Anyone can come out. Just meet up here, and we'll go and do some investigating." And I'm like, "Oh shit, that's 45 minutes from my house. I could drive that." Meet up with him. He goes to like 5 cemeteries and does EVPs and photos and all this stuff. And I see some stuff. I experience some stuff. I hear some stuff. And that night everyone leaves, and I kind of hang around with him. And I'm like, "Hey, I just want to talk shop a little bit." And up until January of this year, we've worked exclusively together ever since. So
Nice.
just about, give or take, almost 14 years. And I learned a lot about the paranormal working with him. I learned a lot about spiritualism and um, just everything, by having someone that was much more experienced than me, to where, he knew investigating so well that when we decided to film our show, it's like I didn't need to tell him how to do it. He just knew, because we've been working together for 7 years before that. And it's gotten to the point now where, you know, everyone's always like, "Oh, so why are you in the paranormal?" And someone's like, "Oh, well, I wanna, prove that ghosts exists, or I want to do this and do that." It's been 15 years. I'm kind of past that now. I don't need to prove ghosts exist. I know the people that I talk to. You know. So what am I trying to prove? I want to capture the best evidence I can. Eh, I've caught some pretty cool stuff. I have a thermal anomaly of something walking through a cemetery, and it's colder than the air around it. That's
Yeah.
some pretty cool stuff. I don't know how
Yeah.
much more I could top that with. So, what's left for me? Honestly, I think the only thing that I have left is I want to tell stories now. and I want to tell stories that no one tells. Like, for example, the show, we focused on lesser known haunted locations because no one's telling those stories. No one knows about the ghosts, about the history of the building, about, the contributions these people made while in their lifetime. And sometimes it's really significant contributions. I'll give you an example. One of the locations we did was actually, before it blew up a little bit, was Tinker Swiss Cottage in Rockford, Illinois. And we did, I want to say, 3 episodes there. We filmed 3 episodes. And then just last year, they were filmed for Jack Osborne's show. And
Okay.
they were less than truthful on their show. They made some things up because I know all the history of that building. I know the spirits. I've investigated them more times than I can count. I've had more conversations than I can count. I know the story. And what they had in their show was not the story. It's not the spirits. It's not the staff. They twisted things and made it more entertaining, but it wasn't true. And locations like that, they can be discovered that way. Or you can have a location like Broadhead Manor in Broadhead, Wisconsin. When Bill and his partner at the time, Ann, contacted us, they didn't know what was going on. They bought this 60,000 square foot middle school. They were converting it into a haunted house to run a haunted house out of. And every time they do something construction wise, things would go nuts in the building. Footsteps, voices, stuff moving. Bill was on one of those rolling scaffolding carts one time, and they pushed the cart. You know, normal paranormal activity when you do construction in a building, right? But
Yeah.
they didn't know that. So we go and investigate, and we put our first episode out for the show in season 1. It was our season 1 finale. And we had a lot of really crazy things happen. And all of a sudden, people started contacting Broadhead Manor, like, hey, I saw the episode, I saw the show. I want to come investigate too. And hey, your partner's finally here.
Made
So
it.
he goes, yeah, sure, let's start renting the building out. And all of a sudden, the building's packed. We get to season 3, we do the episode where we concentrate on the second floor, and now the building's, all summer long, all fall long, every weekend packed. Weekdays starting to get investigated. Conferences, other films are being filmed there now. Music videos are being filmed there now. All because a couple of fat guys in their basement decided to make an episode and put it out on the internet so that people could hear the story of the building and of the spirits and all the work the owners put in to keep these buildings from being torn down. And it's been a long way back around, but I found that that's where I want to be now. I don't need to prove to you that ghosts exist. I'm going to prove to you that this building is really cool and we shouldn't tear it down.
That's kind of a theme with a lot of the people that we've been talking to lately. And I mean, there are some episodes I haven't even. Well, the episode that just dropped this week is with Austin Lawrence, and he kind of has that same mentality. And I know, like, we talked to Bree Hollingshead, and she very much was into
Bree's a good friend of mine.
history preservation and those
Hmm.
stories and those landmarks, uh, sticking around and not being lost in time or being torn down. And that, I think, is a super noble cause that has been popping up in the paranormal community that you didn't really ever expect to see. And I
Right.
actually super appreciate when people such as yourself will go and give a different location that a lot of others aren't paying attention to, the time of day, because
Hmm.
it seems like, especially now, there's like 5 to 10 locations that, because they were on an episode of Ghost Hunters or because Zach Baggins spin kicked a
Hmm.
ghost there, uh, that's
Right.
all anybody ever cares about, is because that was on TV. So now I need to go to this
Yep.
house. And a lot of the people who
Yep.
are producing this content on YouTube and other forms of social media are just kind of hitting those hot button locations. And there's obviously thousands upon thousands of other locations that are just sitting there ready to be lost in time or torn
Hmm.
down, people aren't like they're not even looking. So I
No.
really like
And,
when someone like yourself, you know, has such an amazing story like that.
and if you think about it, let's take for example one of the episodes we did. It was for our research study on the Black Hawk War. So we're studying the Black Hawk War of 1832 and all the battle sites, the massacre sites, all the major events where people lost their life. So one of the first places we started from was like 20 minutes from my partner Dan's house. Perfect. We drive out, we investigate, we drive back, no muss, no fuss. So we go there and we start communicating with these guys, and they won't shut up. These spirits are just talking nonstop. And if you think about it, I don't remember exactly when we started investigating. I want to say it was like 2013, give or take. So, in a roundabout way, you're talking someone that died and became a spirit and hasn't talked to anybody in almost 200 years. And now a bunch of dudes walk up and they're like, "Hey, come talk to me." They're going to have a lot to say. But it's
Right.
not Waverly. It's not Bobby Mackey's. It's not Eastern State. It's this little park in the middle of a small town that has 12 headstones on it. That, funny enough, isn't considered a cemetery. And the park has no sunset hours. So you can be standing in the park at 3 o'clock in the morning and the police can't kick you out. But it's like you don't need these massive locations. Go to your cemetery down the street and talk to these people, and you're going to get great stuff. And you actually might learn something really cool, like the fact that John Giles Adams, a very young captain in the Black Hawk War of 1832, stood on that hill with 9 of his men, or 8 of his men, 9 including himself, to protect the militia company he belonged to, 275 men, protect their retreat from Black Hawk's forces. Those 9 men laid down their lives so everybody else could retreat back to Fort Dixon. That's a badass story. But it's a
Yeah.
story that nobody knows because no one wants to tell it. Go out there and tell those stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's more badass than my story where I show up like 45 minutes late, and
I want to
have
know.
nothing to show for it. But I do want to say that you bring up a good point that there are a lot of, like, everybody's always looking for like that haunt, right? And they're, what's on TV, what's popular, what's on social media, but look close to home because there are places within sometimes walking distance of where you
Oh yeah,
live that you can go and experience this, and then in turn you can potentially preserve these historical places as well.
yeah. Before
Yeah.
Dan and I filmed our episode at Maple Cemetery, which is the cemetery in his hometown, we'd always investigate from the sidewalk because the sidewalk, you're not breaking the threshold of the cemetery, you're not trespassing. You're on public land. You can stand there all night long and nobody cares. Well, we were investigating the cemetery so often, and so many times the police would come by and be like, "Hey, did you catch anything tonight?" "No, not yet, man. We just got started." "All right, cool. I'll be back in a while. Let me know if you see anything cool." After a while, they start going, "Why aren't you guys inside the cemetery?" And we're like, "Well, that'd be trespassing. We don't want to do that." And they
Mm.
go, "Oh, well, I give you permission. You guys can go ahead."
Well,
But it's within walking distance of his house. Sometimes the coolest stuff can happen if you just go for a walk and find something cool and investigate it, and someone goes, "Oh, I know who owns that. I could totally get you permission to be in there at night." Sweet. I would have never done that if all I focused on was driving to Waverly or going to Bobby Mackey's or going to, Penhurst or whatever. Go find some broken down house that has some really cool story attached to it, and you can be like, "Hey, you know, who was the owner that used to live here?" "Oh, Mr. Smith." "Actually, it was Mr. Smith. What was his first name?" "Mike." It was Mike. That's cool. Okay, now we have a cool story and some evidence that's like, wow, that's actually lines up with the story, and it's a story that nobody knows, and now I get to tell it.
Yeah. That's. I think the beauty of filmmaking, just kind of lining up right there and just
Yeah.
presenting it to you in this nice little paranormal box. And so,
As long as you don't fake the content, come up with a story that's not true. You have to tell the real story. You can't be like, well, this story's kind of boring. I need to spice this up a little bit. No, just keep digging. The stories are spicy. You just have to find the right stuff. Don't make stuff up. Don't fake the evidence. Don't abuse the spirits like you wouldn't abuse a person. As long as you do these things, any story you tell, people are going to love it. They're going to eat it up. I have a presentation option for all the conferences I go to. It's a presentation just about Broadhead Manor and all the cool stories I have for the stuff I've experienced. And I have a little bit of an advantage because I'm a filmmaker, so a lot of my stories are on film, but some of them aren't. Some of them are just told because they happened between filmings or something like that. But I get more people interested in those presentations because I'm telling a cool story about a location they can go to than the presentation I give where something's super scientific, or I try to break down this technology and how it works. Nobody really wants to watch that because it's not compelling. But here's a cool story, and everybody eats it up.
yeah. And then on that note, also, I think a way that you can tell a story, even if you have a lack of evidence, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to create false evidence. Because one of the
No.
things
Right.
that interests me about what you're doing is, you're, whether you plan to be or not, you're a character in this program. So when I'm seeing
Absolutely.
this stuff and the way that we shot our documentary that we did, it's like, okay, we did find evidence, we did on location stuff, but I filmed and I it was very important to me to film JC and I. Like, okay, well now we're in the car and this is us while we're in the car. And so the story isn't just, well, the Melonheads or a Ohio thing that starts in Kirtland and it goes back to this date. And instead of being so historically informative, we are providing that, but also here's us, cracking jokes while we're in the car driving to this place while two dudes are searching for the unknown and trying to find answers. Then here we are,
Hmm.
we are the characters of this show that you're watching. And it's not just strictly about the Melonheads and it's not just strictly about the Sasquatchers, but there's just this beautiful medley of frames that exist. And so that's all. I don't know, a self-indulgent way of saying like, hey, the ghost might not talk, but you just filmed yourself doing it, and so that is
Right.
interesting too, and that's something people should pay
Right.
closer attention to.
Yeah,
The
I think
important thing is that maybe I didn't get great activity. Maybe that was just an off night. Ghosts aren't trained dogs. You can't just click a button and they activate. It might have just been a bad night for me, but I just introduced you to the location. So now you go and you capture the stuff that I couldn't. And even if that means that your video is better than mine, I still did my job.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I think that and to go back to Drew's story about when we were looking for the Melonheads and that we on the way back we stopped at a Sheets, and the Sheets is literally like
Yeah.
in this town in Kirtland, and nobody at the Sheets knew what the Melonheads were. Like, you live in this town that has this lore and everything, but like, right? And I'm standing at the counter and
Yeah.
I'm talking to this kid at the at the cash counter, and I'm like, yeah, we're really out looking for the Melonheads. He's like, the what? And I was like, oh man, you gotta look it up and go out there and find them.
Mm.
We didn't see them in person, but you go get them.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We found no Melonhead. You know what we did though? We proved the existence of the doctor that's in the lore. That even
Etienne
like
Crow.
a lot of the evidence online all pointed to him not existing and being a myth that was perpetrated to further the Melonhead lore. And we 100%, we didn't talk to him, but I thought we found his grave and we proved this dude existed. So if nothing else, that's one thing that we could always hang our hats on, so that when you're on Wikipedia, anybody listening, now that we've brought the melon heads up, and it says that Etienne Crow didn't actually exist, I can tell you that
Wrong.
you check out our documentary for free on our YouTube channel, and you'll see that he very much was a real person. So, uh, but wow, man, this was a great chat, and we really did not scratch the surface at all. We we love those episodes that just kind of breeze right by. I love them a little more when JC's with me when we start recording, but
It must only feel like you've been here for 15 minutes then.
It went by fast, guys. I don't even know where I was at.
Yeah, just blink and it was over.
we do like to cut it off right about now. I mean, that way, if like, hey, if you like chatting with us, I'd rather chat with you for another hour, some other day than keeping you up late
I can
tonight.
absolutely come back. No worries.
So go ahead and promote everything that you have to promote. Drop all your links, plug it all, and
Okay.
yeah, the final word. That's all for you.
Thank you. The links below me here. The link tree, you can find all my stuff. My trailers for episodes or for projects that I've worked on. You can find my social media, my books. All that is in the link tree. Smalltownproductions.com. That's my company website. That's where I do all my video production work and my graphic design work. And if you do events, I have a media kit on there to where you can go to it and you can see my bio, my pictures, events that I've gone to, and all that stuff. If you're interested in following me on social media, I'm most prevalent on Facebook, and I have an Instagram. I'm not super with Instagram. Most of the time, it's just sharing content from Facebook over to Instagram. But I'm very active on Facebook all day and posting and liking and sharing content all day. So that's a great place to follow me, and you can see things that I've got coming up, things that I'm working on. I'm currently working on a book right now that I plan to finish by the end of summer. I'm aiming for 50,000 words, and I'm just a little over 41,000. So I'm almost there, almost got it. I'm not quite ready to announce what it is just yet, but that'll happen here in the future. I'm working on documentaries, editing documentaries right now. I have a new show that I'm currently trying to figure out exactly what the story is and how I'm going to tell it. I don't quite know yet. I feel like Expedition Entity was kind of like striking lightning, and sometimes it's hard to strike lightning twice. So that's in the works. I have a horror short in the fall that I'm planning to get done. So that'll be put on my social media and my Facebook and whatnot. And if you frequent paranormal events, I'm doing a large number of conferences. I'm doing the Chicago Paranormal Conference this weekend. So on Saturday, I'm really looking forward to going to that and seeing the people there that I haven't seen in a while. After that, I'm investigating with Sam Beltrusis at Broadhead Manor on July 20th. That's going to be a great event. Anyone in the area can go to that. Anyone going to Battlefield Bash in Gettysburg, I'll be there in July. Michigan Paracon, I'm going to be there. Chris Fleming's pop-up Paracon, I'm going to be at that one. And then here's a fun one that you guys might be interested in. Have you ever heard of the Roth House?
JC, have you? I have not.
I don't think so.
So the Roth House, Mary Roth, I believe, and I'm not completely secure in telling the history yet, but I believe Mary Roth was the first documented possession in the country. And they
Okay.
did a seance at the house because another young girl had a very similar experience, and it's a whole convoluted story. But my friend Neil from Graveside Paranormal, he runs an event company, and he's doing a little mini expo at the Roth House in October. And the plan is to do a 200-person seance, funneling all of their energy into a medium in the center. And then we're going to see if all that energy has an effect on the house when people investigate it afterwards.
Lights it on fire.
Like, who
Is
knows?
I don't know if that sounds like either a really good idea or a really bad idea.
Honestly, I think we're
which.
probably flipping a coin. I don't know, but it sounds interesting. And
Interesting.
not only,
Oh, sorry to interrupt, but I was also going to point out a 200 person. That makes me wonder what like maybe the Guinness World Record is for a séance. Like, are you edging into
Good point. Yeah,
world record territory?
unfortunately, the largest seance was done online, and it's by thousands of people.
that
I
doesn't
couldn't
count.
find an in-person one,
Yeah,
so
no,
I'll be looking into it.
We're gonna make some phone calls.
Yeah,
I know the Pope,
I've been.
so
Yeah,
I'm
get
gonna
more
take
people,
care of
pull
that.
them in, get some buses. But the cool thing is not only are they doing this just ridiculously huge seance with the medium Diet, who is it's my BFF. Like we're very close friends. One of the best people in the world and a really, really, really strong medium. We're filming a documentary about the seance too, where participants in the seance, there's going to be like one of those testimonial booths where like you sit down and there's a camera pointing at you and you kind of tell your story a little bit. Any of the 200 participants can come in and film their testimony about what happened to them, what they felt, what they heard, what they experienced, how it felt to them. Like, oh, I got dizzy. They can record all that stuff if they want to, and then that's a part of the documentary. The seance itself is a part of the documentary. All the security cameras in the house for the daytime investigations for the expo and the nighttime investigations after the seance, all of that is part of the documentary. And it's I don't know what to expect. I've been to a seance, but not of that size, and I've never thought what's going to happen to the paranormal activity in the house afterwards. But I'm really looking forward to seeing again what that story is and how we're going to tell it.
Yeah, that's super cool. Definitely,
That sounds awesome.
everybody, keep your eyes peeled for that. That's something that
Yeah,
I'm going to keep a mental note of to pay
sure.
attention
It's
for.
it's called Seance at the Roth House. It's October 26th. It's just south of Chicago. It's an all day expo with vendors and speakers and stuff, and then the seance is at night. And then at some point, probably in spring of next year, there'll be a documentary about it, about all the shenanigans that went on and what crazy things this seance does, hopefully to the spirits and gives them all this energy, and we're going to capture all this activity. I'm really excited. But yeah, so other than that, if you want to find me, it's the two links down here, and give me a follow, and I love the chat.
Yeah, awesome. For any of the audio listeners, check the show notes for the links. I always include those. This was really fun. I really appreciate it. This was very interesting for a lot of reasons, but this was different than a lot of our ghost chats and our ghost hunting chats. And I don't know if it's strictly because we talk so much about the film aspect and the behind the scenes works. But this was really unique, and I do look forward to hopefully talking to you again in the future.
Absolutely, I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Okay, so
great 15 minutes, man.
Woo! Everybody listening, definitely check out the links. Like, follow, share, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and hit the outro and let Larry enjoy the rest of his evening. Everybody, have a wonderful night or morning, afternoon, wherever it is in the world where you're listening to it right now. And the outro button didn't work after I kill it.
Boy.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.